My fiancée told everyone that she had cheated on me with my ex on the eve of the wedding. There's a kind of silence that follows betrayal, a quiet so loud it drowns everything else out. That was the only thing I could hear the night my world shifted. I'm Jasper, a 35-year-old motorcycle craftsman living in the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina. I own a vintage motorcycle restoration shop called Iron Maple Garage, named after my father's favorite tree. I've spent the last 12 years building that business from nothing but rusted parts, hard hands, and word-of-mouth reputation. We're not just a garage. We're a symbol of pride for collectors who bring their bikes across state lines to see what we can do. Business was booming, life was steady, and I was 6 months away from marrying a woman I thought would be my partner for life. Her name was Lillian. She came into my life like a warm breeze, charming, confident, and full of energy. She worked part-time at a boutique downtown but spent most of her time trying to break into social media influencing. It didn't bother me at first. She was passionate, creative, and seemed genuinely supportive of my work. Or so I thought. We got engaged in January, after 2 years of dating. I spent 3 months designing the engagement ring, a custom sapphire set in brushed silver, handcrafted by a local jeweler. The proposal was simple, a hike through the Smoky Mountains, a scenic overlook, just the two of us. She cried, said yes, and posted the video to her Instagram within the minute. It felt real. It felt perfect. Fast forward to a chilly Friday evening in early October. Lillian was out for her bridal crew night, something she did once a month with her closest friends, Marissa, Jody, Emma, and Laurel. I was at home, half watching a documentary while sketching ideas for a '59 Royal Enfield restoration. That's when my phone pinged. Marissa had gone live on Instagram. It wasn't unusual. She loved broadcasting everything: cocktails, brunches, inside jokes that made no sense to anyone outside their circle. I clicked out of idle curiosity, expecting nothing more than giggles and maybe a toast to upcoming weddings. But what I heard turned my blood cold. There they were, Lillian and her friends, laughing over wine and snacks. Jody asked, "So, Lil, tell us something you haven't told Mr. Perfect yet." Lillian grinned. "Okay, but you can't judge me." She took a sip of her drink, leaning into the camera. "So, remember Ethan?" A chorus of exaggerated gasps. "Your ex Ethan?" Marissa shouted. "Yeah. We met for coffee a couple weeks ago while Jasper was at that motor expo. Totally innocent, but he looked really good. You know how it is." Lillian. Emma laughed. "Did anything happen?" She winked. "Let's just say I got reminded of what I'm missing. But it's no big deal. Jasper's never going to find out. He's too busy with his tools and spreadsheets." The laughter that followed was loud, smug, and completely unaware that I was one of the viewers. I sat there, staring at my screen, the sketches in my lap now crumpled under my clenched hands. I don't remember typing the comment, only the rush that came after I pressed enter. Glad I tuned in. Wedding's off. The laughter stopped. You could see it, Marissa's jaw dropping, Lillian leaning forward, squinting at the screen. Then her face, cocky to pale in seconds. Panic swallowed her expression. The live ended immediately. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls from Lillian, messages from her friends. I turned it off and sat in silence, staring at the ring box I kept on my bookshelf. It suddenly looked like a relic from someone else's life. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed on the couch, listless, watching the ceiling as fragments of our relationship played in my mind like home movies. Her half-hearted compliments when I finished a build. The way she'd scroll through her phone while I talked about the shop. The time she asked if we could paint the garage a more photogenic color for her videos. The dismissal when I wanted to donate part of our wedding fund to a veteran bike restoration charity. "Let's focus on the dresses first," she'd said. I'd given in. That morning, she showed up on my doorstep, face streaked with mascara, wrapped in a too-light cardigan like she didn't expect to be out in the cold. "Jasper, please," she said, voice trembling. "That video, it wasn't serious. We were drinking. I was just playing around." "Playing around?" I asked, holding the doorframe for support. "You mocked our life. You met your ex behind my back. You said I'm too busy to notice." "It was just talk." "I didn't mean to hurt you," she pleaded. "I never thought you'd see it." That last part stung more than anything else. "I never thought you'd see it." "Exactly," I said. "You never thought I'd see who you really are." She cried. she begged. She reached for my hand, and I pulled it back. I need you to leave, I said calmly. You're just going to throw everything away? All we've built? I nodded. Because I built it on trust. And you just knocked out the foundation. As I closed the door behind her, I realized the house had never felt so quiet. But it was a peaceful kind of quiet, like the moment after a storm, when the debris is still visible, but the air is fresh again. After Lillian left, I stood in the doorway for a while, listening to the echo of her retreating footsteps. I wasn't angry, not in the way people expect. What I felt was deeper than that. It was disappointment, the kind that builds when you've invested years of trust into someone and they treat it like confetti, something to toss around for show. The engagement ring, a sapphire with silver tendrils that mirrored mountain roots, now sat in the kitchen drawer. I couldn't look at it without feeling the weight of everything I'd overlooked. The red flags hadn't been blaring sirens, they'd been quiet warnings I'd chosen not to hear. Like the way she'd called my business a cute little thing in front of her friends. Or how she'd jokingly tell people, my job is to look good, and Jasper pays for the rest. I'd laughed then. Now it just felt hollow. That morning, I reached out to someone I trusted completely, Nathan, my best friend since high school and my shop's senior mechanic. I texted, need a place to stay for a few days. Lillian and I are done. 15 minutes later, he was at my driveway in his beat-up F-150. Truck's warm, couch is clean, fridge is full, he said without asking questions. Let's go. I packed lightly, just clothes, my passport, financial documents, and the external hard drive with client bills and vendor contracts. On my way out, I took one last look at the house I'd rented with Lillian. Half of the furniture, the decor, the framed photos, her fingerprints were everywhere. And yet, for the first time, it didn't feel like I was leaving a home. It felt like I was walking out of a show. Nathan's place was a modest 2-bedroom cabin near the Pisgah forest. The silence there was healing. No traffic noise. No hum of LED ring lights or rehearsed monologues for a following of 3,842 Instagram users. We cracked open a couple of ginger ales that night while sitting on his back porch, watching the sun drop behind the trees. What happened? He asked finally. I showed him the recording. I'd saved it before Lillian deleted the stream, my hands trembling as I hit the screen record button during the final seconds of her performance. Nathan watched the video in silence. When it ended, he set his drink down and said, "That woman never deserved you." It wasn't pity. It was certainty. And hearing someone else say it out loud gave me the strength to believe it myself. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with my attorney, Clara Raymond. She had been with me since Iron Maple Garage was just an idea in my notebook. Clara was thorough, blunt, and didn't take nonsense from anyone. I walked into her downtown office with a manila folder of printouts, texts, screenshots, emails, and the full recording. "This isn't just a breakup, Clara," I said, laying out the evidence. "She's mocked me publicly, met her ex in secret, and there's a pattern of behavior here that's going to escalate." She looked through the material, nodding slowly. "We need to protect you personally and professionally," she said. "I'll file for a no-contact order first. Since there's a clear digital trail, it'll be hard for her to dispute the facts. I'll also get started on terminating any joint liabilities." That hit a nerve. I'd forgotten how many things we'd merged in preparation for the wedding: a shared credit card, a joint storage unit, her being an authorized user on my business account for venue emergencies. Clara's brows furrowed at that one. "She has access to your business card?" she asked. "Only limited," I replied. "But I'll call the bank now." I left her office and spent the rest of the day shutting down shared finances. I removed Lillian from every login, every access point. Changed my passwords. Froze the credit card we'd opened together. I also contacted the vendors for the wedding venue, florist, catering, photography. Almost all had non-refundable deposits, but 2 were kind enough to return partial payments after I explained the situation. Not one of them seemed surprised. It was like they'd seen this type of thing before. When I got back to Nathan's, there was a voicemail from Lillian's mother, Grace. She was a polished woman from Charleston, always dressed like she was on her way to a charity gala. "Jasper, this is Grace Templeton. I think you're overreacting. Lillian's devastated. Please reconsider calling off the wedding. People have already been invited." I played the message for Nathan, who shook his head. "That woman's never worked a day in her life and thinks you're the help. She once asked if I'd ever consider selling the shop to invest in Lillian's brand. Nathan nearly spit out his drink. She said it with a straight face. That night, I got a message from a blocked number. You ruined everything. Hope it was worth it. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a screenshot to Clara. The following morning, she called me. We're filing for a restraining order today. Between the messages, the video, and her past access to your business assets, the court will take this seriously. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Do it. Later that day, I drove out to Iron Maple. The shop had always been my sanctuary, but I needed to be sure it was protected. I checked the security system, changed the entry codes, and sat down with my team to explain the situation. I may be dealing with some personal drama, I told them. If Lillian or anyone tied to her shows up, do not engage. Call me. Call the sheriff if needed. They all nodded, loyal as ever. Diego, our youngest mechanic, clapped me on the back. We've got you, boss. Before I left, I checked the shop voicemail. There were 3 messages from customers canceling appointments. 2 had been longtime clients. The third said she heard I had a reputation. My stomach sank. It was starting. The cancellations weren't random. They were coordinated. I realized this after a 4th client, a woman named Karen Fielding, left a voice message explaining why she wouldn't be bringing her Harley in for the winter rebuild. I heard from someone that you mistreated your fiancée. I'm sorry, Jasper, but I can't support a business run by someone who behaves like that. I stood in the shop office, replaying that message 3 times. My knuckles tightened on the phone receiver as the implications set in. This wasn't just fallout from a breakup. It was an attack. Someone, most likely Lillian or one of her friends, was actively spreading lies. I sent the recordings to Clara. The next morning, I met her at her office again. She looked even more focused than before. We're escalating, she said, spreading out legal documents. What you're experiencing is targeted defamation. It's already impacted your income, and with 4 lost clients in less than 72 hours, we're moving toward civil damages. She handed me a printed email thread she'd recovered through a subpoena to one of the vendors. It was a burner Gmail account, anonymous, but the tone was all too familiar. The email accused me of cheating, financial misconduct, and being emotionally abusive, with the writer urging customers to consider their conscience before supporting his business. Clara tapped the page. This is enough to file a preliminary claim for injunctive relief. And if we can tie this back to Lillian or any of her inner circle, we're going after monetary damages. How do we prove it's them? I asked. She leaned back, steepling her fingers. People who orchestrate this kind of thing usually overestimate their cleverness. One mistake, one forwarded email, one screenshot. That's when it hit me. Amy. Amy Brooks had been at the live stream. She'd looked uncomfortable the entire time. She was Lillian's friend, yes, but also my cousin Jackson's wife. She was caught in the middle and hadn't said a word since that night. I called Jackson and asked if I could speak to her. He paused, said, I think she's been wanting to talk to you. 10 minutes later, Amy called me. I'm sorry, she began, her voice already trembling. I should have reached out sooner. I just didn't want to get in the middle. You're already in it, I said gently. But I don't blame you. I just need the truth. There was a pause. Then, as if a dam broke, she poured it out. They created a group chat the night of the stream. Lillian, Marissa, Jody, and Emma. After you commented, they started planning how to get ahead of the narrative. They said if you cut off the wedding, you'd look cold and unloving. So they decided to spread a counterstory. What kind of story? That you cheated. That you were controlling. Marissa even joked about making up a fake restraining order. My stomach twisted. Amy continued, I didn't participate. But I watched them plan which of your customers to target, especially women. They thought that would hurt your image more. She sent me screenshots. They were damning. Not just gossip, but deliberate plans. Lists of customers, fabricated stories, instructions on what to say. Clara took one look and smiled grimly. They handed us everything we need. The next week was spent gathering affidavits, filing restraining order violations, and issuing cease and desist letters. The court date for the permanent restraining order and defamation injunction was scheduled. In the meantime, I did my best to keep the shop running. Nathan and the crew stepped up without missing a beat. I even had Diego start taking client meetings so I could handle the legal storm in the background. But the damage was noticeable. Word travels fast in a small business community, especially when lies are dressed in sympathy. One of our biggest clients, the Anders Motorcycle Museum, emailed me saying they were reviewing our partnership. I stared at that message for a long time before responding, attaching a copy of the legal claim and screenshots from the campaign. The next morning, their curator called me directly. "Jasper, we've dealt with enough character assassination over the years to know when something smells fishy. We're sticking with you." That small victory felt enormous. 2 days before the hearing, Clara called with a development. Lillian's attorney reached out. They're offering to settle $10,000 and a mutual non-disclosure. "Not a chance," I said. "I figured. I already rejected it." I smiled for the first time in days. Then she added, "But they're nervous. Which means we're doing something right." The courthouse smelled like pine cleaner and nerves. Clara and I arrived early that morning, her leather briefcase packed with evidence, affidavits, and statements. I was dressed in my best pressed shirt and slacks, not to impress anyone, but to show I respected the process. We weren't just defending a business. We were defending integrity. Lillian arrived 15 minutes before the hearing. She looked transformed. Gone was the trendy influencer look. Instead, she wore a conservative navy blue dress with a pearl necklace. Her hair was down in gentle curls, makeup minimal. It was the version of herself she only showed her church-going aunt from Savannah. She didn't meet my eyes. Her mother, Grace, flanked her like a lawyer without credentials, scowling, whispering, glancing at us like we were dirt under her shoe. Marissa trailed behind them, wearing oversized sunglasses and looking everywhere but at me. I didn't feel anger. Not anymore. Just closure waiting for its cue. The judge, a tall man with a thick mustache and a reputation for not tolerating theatrics, called the hearing to order. He looked over the file for several minutes before inviting Clara to present. She stood calmly. "Your Honor, what you'll see today is a pattern of behavior that began with a moment of cruelty but evolved into a campaign of character destruction." She played the video first. The courtroom sat in silence as Lillian's laughter echoed through the speakers, her confession about meeting Ethan, her comments about my work being beneath her. Then Clara introduced the group chat screenshots from Amy. The judge's eyebrows rose. "This isn't merely gossip," Clara said. "This is orchestrated harm. Targeting specific clients. Distributing false claims of infidelity and abuse. Instructing others to damage the livelihood of a man who, until that moment, had done nothing but love and support the woman, now painting him as a villain." She handed over the sworn statements, clients who had received emails, the museum's director's letter of support, and my financial documentation showing the lost revenue. Then she sat down. Lillian's lawyer, Mr. Lowell, stood up slowly. His tone was soft, rehearsed. "Your Honor, while my client admits that some of her remarks were inappropriate, we must remember that emotions were high. Weddings are stressful, and young women sometimes speak without thinking. But this was never meant to be public." Clara stood. "With respect, Your Honor, the moment you broadcast something live, it is public. And the moment you plan a smear campaign in writing, it becomes intentional." The judge turned to Lillian. "Ms. Templeton, do you have anything to say on your behalf?" She stood, carefully clasping her hands. "I didn't mean to hurt Jasper. I was scared of being left behind. I didn't cheat. I wasn't ready to get married, and I made bad choices. I didn't tell anyone to ruin his business. Miss Templeton," the judge interrupted, "the court has transcripts showing you encouraged falsehoods against Mr. Avery's reputation. That goes beyond immaturity. That crosses into malice." Grace stood up, outraged. "She's just a young woman. Jasper should be the one apologizing for making this public." The judge banged his gavel. "Ma'am, sit down. This is not a family squabble. This is a legal matter." Then, something none of us expected happened. A voice from the back spoke. "Your Honor, may I say something?" It was Benjamin Templeton, Lillian's father. He walked forward, past the pews, hands folded respectfully. The judge raised an eyebrow. "State your name and relation." "Benjamin Templeton, father of the respondent." He looked at Lillian, then at me. "I came here today thinking I'd speak on my daughter's behalf. But after seeing the evidence, I can't. Jasper is a man of character. He built something with his own hands. And what was done to him, what we enabled, was wrong. Gasps rippled through the room. Grace looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. I support the restraining order, Your Honor. And I support any effort to restore what was lost. Because I raised my daughter better than this, even if the world taught her otherwise. Lillian looked away. Marissa stared at the floor. The judge nodded slowly. Noted. Mr. Templeton, thank you for your honesty. When it was done, the verdict came swiftly. Permanent restraining order, granted. Defamation injunction, granted. Order to cease all communication, including indirect messaging or third-party contact, granted. Retractions required to all clients who were misinformed, mandated. Legal fees and partial damages, awarded. As the ruling was read, I didn't feel victorious in the Hollywood sense. There were no fist pumps or cheers. Instead, I felt clean. Like I had just walked out of a storm, soaked and bruised, but standing tall. Grace stormed out of the courtroom. Lillian remained seated, tears in her eyes. Her father gave me a nod before following them out. Outside, Clara smiled. That went as well as it could have. I owe you, I said. No, Jasper. You owe yourself the peace you just won. Some endings don't come with fireworks or clean-cut conclusions. Sometimes, the best kind of closure is the quiet that follows when no one is calling your name in anger anymore. 2 weeks after the ruling, I moved into a new house, nothing extravagant, just a restored 1950s ranch on the southern edge of Asheville. It had a detached garage with tall ceilings, skylights, and enough space for 6 motorcycles and all the custom tools I'd been collecting since I was 20. I painted the walls with my crew. The smell of sawdust and machine oil filled the air. It felt honest. Earned. Nathan helped me set up a new security system, one with real-time cloud backups. Not because I was afraid, but because I was prepared. Lillian never reached out again. I received confirmation through Clara that the retraction emails had been sent to all affected clients, with apologies written in neutral, legal-safe language. Most customers returned. Some never left. A few new ones came in after hearing about what had happened and wanting to support a shop that stood its ground. Business surged not because of sympathy, but because the story traveled. In a tight-knit community, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it has to claw through the weeds to do so. One afternoon, I got a call from the Anders Motorcycle Museum. Jasper, the curator said, we want to partner with Iron Maple to restore a set of rare 1930s Hendersons. Can we lock in a 5-month agreement? It was the biggest contract of my life. I said yes. Later that week, Benjamin Templeton came by the shop. He brought a bottle of aged bourbon and a vintage 1954 matchless frame, rusted and dented but full of potential. I know it's not much, he said, but I figured it belonged with someone who knows how to make broken things strong again. We shared a drink in the shop's back room. I'm filing for divorce, he said after a pause. Grace can't see past herself. I enabled it for years. But after seeing what happened to you, I realized I didn't have to. I'm sorry it took all this, I replied. I'm not, he said. Sometimes it takes a flood to rebuild the foundation. A week later, Clara finalized the settlement in the defamation suit. We had sued Lillian and Marissa jointly. Their attorney offered a $20,000 payout, plus an agreement not to speak publicly about me or the business again. I didn't care about the money. I told Clara to accept on one condition: no non-disclosure from me. I wanted the freedom to tell the truth if I ever needed to. You're not the kind of man who needs to scream it, she said. You live it. 6 months passed. Iron Maple expanded its team. Diego took on a new role as my business partner, and we hired 2 apprentices from a local trade school. One of them, a young woman named Hollis, reminded me of myself at her age, curious, a little stubborn, and completely in love with engines. Watching her learn gave me hope. Not just for the business, but for people. 4 second chances. On the 1-year anniversary of what I now call the live stream incident, I opened my shop to the public for a community day. Free inspections. Raffle draws. Barbecue in the parking lot. At one point, I stood on the small stage we built out of salvaged oak and thanked everyone for standing by me. Life has a way of shaking you until all the loose parts fall out, I said. But it also gives you the chance to rebuild stronger. More precise. More true to who you really are. That night, I stood in my new garage, staring at a freshly restored 48 panhead. It gleamed under the shop lights. I ran my hand across the tank and smiled, not just because of the craftsmanship, but because of what it represented. Resilience. Boundaries. And peace. Real peace, not the kind you get by ignoring red flags or swallowing doubt, but the kind that comes after you walk through the fire and realize you're still standing. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.